So as this war continues to rapidly turn into a humongous humanitarian crisis, voices across the globe continue to call for an immediate ceasefire. Pressure continues to mount on governments for a push to end the hostilities and to stop the bombing of civilians and children, in which over 11,000 Palestinians have been killed. At least about 4,500 young children have been massacred in this campaign of relentless bombing by Israel. Now, more than 300,000 pro-Palestine protesters, in fact, marched through central London. Remember, London has been witnessing some of the biggest protests against this war by Israel. And this marked the largest rally calling for a ceasefire today. The protesters set off green and red flares and also waved Palestinian flags and demanded the occupation should cease to exist. A group of Jewish pro-Palestine protesters also held up placards that read, "Not in my name." The British ministers had called for the cancellation of the protest march earlier because it was asking for a ceasefire. And they were asking for a ceasefire on the occasion of Armistice Day, which also commemorates a ceasefire that ended the First World War. Now, several of these protesters also were hindered by a bunch of right-wing counter-protesters. Now, Armistice Day marks the anniversary of the end of the First World War, and the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and also his Interior Minister Suella Braverman had come out and said that probably a protest march asking for a ceasefire in the Palestinian territory is not a good idea to do because it would offend the sensibilities of the British people on the occasion of Armistice Day, without recognizing that the Armistice Day commemorates the end of the First World War with a ceasefire. Now, the British police ended up arresting at least about 82 people in central London to prevent a breach of peace. Meanwhile, in Spain, some of the protesters stormed the Franco station in Barcelona. The riot police closed the gates to the city's major station while protesters pushed back and tried to enter. The police officers also used shields and batons on the protesters. Pro-Palestine protesters marched in the Irish capital of Dublin, demanding for an immediate ceasefire. The protest comes ahead of an Irish government vote next week about expelling the Israeli ambassador from Ireland. The protesters held up banners that call for the ambassador's expulsion straight away. The protests are taking place in Tel Aviv as well. They're demanding for a ceasefire. The demonstrators are calling for an immediate solution between both the sides to prevent further bloodshed.
We are calling to end the deadliest war against Gaza. We condemn the killing of civilians, especially children, no matter if they're Israeli, if they're Palestinians. We want everyone that live inside the border and outside of it, whether it's within Israel, the Gaza Strip or the West Bank, to live in peace and equality.
Thousands of people rallied in Tel Aviv for the release of the hostages who are presently in the custody of Hamas. The protesters gathered outside of Israel's defense ministry with pictures of the hostages. In the United States, hundreds of demonstrators waved Palestinian flags and chanted "Ceasefire now" near the Delaware home of President Joe Biden. Biden arrived in his home state after participating in events marking the Veterans Day. Biden's motorcade did not pass by the large demonstration which was staged on the side of a major road near the president's home. The more than 1,000 Argentinians gathered in Buenos Aires to show their support for Palestine. The protest had the support of members of human rights groups, indigenous, civil and even LGBTQ organizations. And tens and thousands of people marched through Brussels calling for a ceasefire. The peaceful demonstration included families and children. The demonstrators, in fact, accused the EU of being nothing more than a bystander and of not doing enough to bring about peace. In France, tens of thousands of people are, of course, expected to march against anti-Semitism. More than 3,000 police personnel will be deployed in the French capital.
des in Berlin Molotow-Cocktails auf das werden wir wieder hören. Die abscheulichen Taten der Rache. Alle Medien